Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and of course, Infogalactic News. So, they released a trailer and the cover image of Far Cry 5, and it's very obvious from the start that what they're doing here is that they're attempting to establish white Christian nationalists as the bad guys. I mean, this is not a surprise. We've seen the game industry get increasingly SJW'd. Certainly this is something that we would have expected from Gamergate and so forth. I think that it's going to backfire on them, not necessarily in the sense that the game is going to be a failure or anything. I have no idea what. But what it's going to do is it is going to continue to enhance the appeal of the alt-right. And so it's actually interesting that you said that about Gavin, because my first thought when I looked at it was, is that supposed to be Gavin McInnes? But what's actually interesting is that it actually may be me with a beard on the cover. Now, it doesn't look like me today, but a lot of people have been emailing me and pointing out that it actually looks quite like my old WorldNet Daily header. When I had the mohawk and I had the long hair pulled back. Anyhow, I don't even have a picture of that, so I scanned it. It's from an old photo shoot, actually. No, I'm not saying I'm the Far Cry 5 villain. It's not like they have a supreme Dark Lord, and his VFM and so forth. But and also, it's not exactly like me, because I have these ears that stick out at the top, and in the picture that this looks like, the ears are flat rather than sticking out. If they had done that, we would have obviously known. So anyhow, I don't know if I could do a cosplay. I don't know if I have enough hair left. But it was kind of interesting, because like I said, my first thought was that it was Gavin. That's the other thing when you talk about the broken nose thing, is that you may not realize, but my nose has been broken 3 times, and so it has a slight crook there as well. The audio is always low. Ignore that. And so what's funny that you mentioned Stefan, because to me, 2 of the figures, other figures, look somewhat identifiable. I thought that the bald bearded guy actually somewhat resembled Stefan a little bit, and the guy on the left looks a lot like Pax Dickinson. So anyhow, we'll see. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. But it is interesting. And of course, it's not a huge surprise if they went looking for, it's the cover of Far Cry 5. If they went looking for someone who described themselves as a Christian nationalist, obviously, with all my columns, I mean, I think it actually said Christian nationalist in my WorldNet Daily header for a while. So, so anyhow, and the other thing too is that what you may not realize is that I actually know a fair number of people at Ubisoft. I actually worked with a number of them when I was working in game finance, and so that's the other thing. I mean, I actually know the 2 of the brothers who own Ubisoft, as well as a couple executives and a number of lower level people. So it wouldn't shock me. No, I don't. What are you talking about? Always, you gotta love the SJWs. I mean, they don't care what the facts are. They don't care what they know. Anything that they think makes you sound good to them, they will deny. You know, I mean, if I won the lottery tomorrow, and I said I won the lottery, some SJW would be going, "No, you didn't." I mean, you know, I was analyzing games for their studios that they were. Let me see. What were some of the games we were looking at? Oh, they were looking at doing a Game of Thrones game. They were looking at a couple other. I'd have to look up my files, but I remember there was a Game of Thrones game, and then there's some game that they were doing in a studio in Shanghai that was some kind of, you know, fighting game or something. We didn't actually end up working with them, but we chose to finance other projects. Um, yeah, the the brothers are fairly short. The interesting thing is, I didn't actually, when I met the Guillermo brothers, or the two that I met, it had nothing to do with games per se. It was because they own the company that owns Thrustmaster, and I was talking to them about the possibility of turning the War Mouse into into a Thrustmaster product. So. Yeah, I mean, you know, I thought they were great, good guys. Yeah, I've never had any. I mean, I'm not crazy about what Ubisoft did with the Warlords franchise that um, that Steve was doing down at Infinite, but you know, I think the game could have and should have been a lot better, you know, but. You know, there's, like all big studios, they have their issues and so forth. And yeah, I think they probably do want it memed. I've already seen it memed with Trump in the Senate. And so, no, that's the thing. SJWs don't buy these games. I mean, any more than, you know, there are some SJWs who are gamers, obviously, and they will buy the games anyhow. But it doesn't create new demand for the games from the SJWs. All going SJW tends to do is creates an amount of media attention, which the marketing people always assume is going to lead to success, sales success. And obviously that's very seldom true. So yes, the volume's always low. It's because of the iPad I use. Just get headphones or something. Anyhow, yeah, and so I mean, I'm not going to condemn it. I don't know anything about the game other than the cover, and I don't actually have a problem at all with the Christian nationalists being the bad guys. You know, I mean, Nazis are done. Nazis are overdone. Nazis are boring and lame in video games. I mean, I'm all for, you know, I'm all for them making us the bad guys, because to them we are the bad guys. It's a fact. So, hang on a second. Okay. Sorry, just had to tell some folks to not pop in right now. Anyhow, you know, we don't know, and it would be fun. I don't think you can play it as the bad guys in this type of game. Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that Hollywood is always going to, as long as Hollywood is dominated by Jews, they're going to be obsessed with the Nazis. That's just the way it's going to be. I think that's actually one reason to look forward to the Chinese takeover of Hollywood, if it proceeds and if it happens, because then maybe we might actually get some new storylines. You know, then we're going to start seeing the Japanese be the bad guys or something. Um, but why can't Europeans make their own Hollywood? Because their countries are too small and their languages are too limited. So um, pretty much only the um, pretty much only the um, Italians have really been very successful in doing movies, and maybe that's because they invented opera. They have a certain talent for drama that I would say the other Europeans don't. There are actually a surprising amount of um, successful television shows that come out of Scandinavia. They usually get turned into British television shows. Um, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is one example. But there's a whole bunch of you know, and anything that involves a lot of fog and a drunk detective, yeah, sort of a snow noir thing tends to be, if you look at it, it's usually based somehow on a Scandinavian television show or something. Um, but anyhow, uh, but yes, the thing is that they're going to, most of the people that are involved in making movies and many of the people who are involved in making games are not Christians. And so they are naturally going to be inclined to make Christians the bad guys. And so um, that's just how it is. Um, and so, but I like the fact. I think it's great if they are attempting to make the alt-right the bad guys for the same reason that I thought it was great when Hillary Clinton did so. Because, it helps both sides understand where the lines are drawn. And frankly, just like somebody mentioned with the man in the high castle, what we have to offer is actually something that is highly desirable to many people, much more desirable than what is on offer in these shattered remnants of what is left of, multiculturalism and globalism and diversity and vibrancy and all the other crap, all the stuff that people are trying to move away from and try to get out from. Yeah, but we know they're cowards, you know. They're not going to make Muslims be the bad guys. They're not going to make Jews be the bad guys because they're afraid of, number one, getting murdered by Muslims, and number two, getting criticized by the Jews in the media. I mean, this is what you'd expect. And so, let them let them have their fantasies if that's what they want. Because what's going to happen is that we're going to turn it around on them. Just like people, decided that they were more fans of Darth Vader. Just like when people want to buy stuff, when people want to dress up, do they dress up like the stormtroopers, or do they dress up like the rebellion soldiers and fighters? So, do I see a chance that Jews are expelled from America? I think it'll probably happen sooner or later. I mean, certainly the elite Jews expect to leave. On the Y plantation, there was a meeting of the leaders of a number of the most significant Jewish organizations, and they basically concluded that it wasn't time to leave yet, but that they needed to start thinking about where to jump to next. And so, but I don't think that's the issue now. I think that the continued departure of Jews from Europe is really the main story right now, which is why Benjamin Netanyahu, to his credit, told the Jews of France, it's time to come home. We have a homeland now. Come and help us build it. And so I was talking to, no, it's not, well, I mean, I wouldn't say more to destroy, but, you know, their initial thought was China, which I made fun of at the time because I just don't think that's an option. Like I've said many times, I think that both Europeans and Jews fundamentally misunderstand the reason that they have not gotten along well for centuries. And um, and that's why some of the Jewish leadership is failing to understand their uh, the nature of their probable relationship with the Chinese. You know, just because you're able to compete very well with a bunch of, I've mentioned this before, but I'll explain briefly. Um, Europeans are uniformly a very high trust people, with some exceptions in the South, with some exceptions, you know, Italy and Greece, to a lesser extent Spain. Um, so, you know, Jews are very high. First of all, Jews, you have to understand, are basically half Italian, more or less, and so, um, so genetically speaking, so they are fundamentally a tightly knit, low trust group. Okay, Europeans tend to be a moderately knit, high trust group. So there's tremendous altruism, tremendous openness to the outsider, and so forth that does not exist in most other parts of the world. But you have to keep in mind that I've lived in Japan. I have lived in, you know, basically the part of America that's basically Northern European, and then then I've lived in Europe, in Italy. I've also been in England. Um, I mean, I would consider Italians to be about like 2/3 European, is my experience. And you know, I speak Italian, and love the culture, love the people. But, you know, this is not a criticism thing. This is just a analysis. Okay, so for, you know, 1,000 years or more, you have this low trust group that is mixed in with these high trust people. However, the high trust people were keeping them in their ghettos, whatever, because, you know, they didn't trust them for religious reasons. Well, and to a certain extent, economic reasons. The whole usury thing, which was ultimately religious, but, you know, we'll just separate them for now. So over time, those restrictions fell away, and so you had the low trust group able to profitably take advantage of the high trust group. And that's why you ended with, you know, in Germany in the 1920s, you had very highly concentrated ownership of banks and other things like that. Now the problem is that unless people are very disciplined, unless the low trust group is very disciplined, and this is not, again, I'm stressing this, I can't stress this enough, this is not a Jewish thing. We see exactly the same pattern in places like Malaysia. We see, you know, we see it in the Philippines. We see it all over the place. And what it is basically, it's a combination of three factors. Low trust versus high trust as far as the outsiders are concerned. Then it's about how nepotistic or how pro-in-group they are. And, you know, Europeans tend to be very, very bad about that. And then, finally, high performance, how high performance the group is. So, for example, with the Gypsies, you have a low performance group. The Gypsies have never integrated. They have never fit in because they are low trust, and they are also, you know, they're also very nepotistic. But they're low performance. So they don't cause, you know, they have, you know, a tremendous amount of conflict with the majority population, but it's not as big a deal. So, I mean, you would not believe how, I was once in Switzerland and I saw a convoy of, I kid you not, 60 police cars, 30, like 40 in front and 20 behind, basically escorting a big gypsy caravan. And they literally closed down all of the exits, and they had police with machine guns at each of the exits along the way. Gypsies are originally from India, if I'm understanding correctly. So anyhow, the Chinese are actually very similar to the Jews in that they are high performance, they are highly nepotistic, and they are also very low trust. And so that's why you're seeing things happen in the United States already. The United States is the first place where the Chinese are coming into serious conflict with the Jews. And what the Jews are clearly astonished to discover is that the Chinese are seriously outcompeting them. You know, they're driving them out of the Ivy League. No, I mean, but the Chinese have a very different perspective because there are 1.6 billion of them. You know, there are orders of magnitude more Chinese than Jews, and so obviously they're going to handle their situations very differently. Okay? And so the reason I'm explaining this to you is because awareness of these patterns allows you to make intelligent observations and predictions about how the various groups and how the various individuals influenced by the groups are going to behave. Okay? But see, this is where you're wrong. You feel the Chinese would get along better with Europeans than with Jews. You're absolutely wrong. You're not understanding what I just told you. Okay? Well, Russians are part European and part Asian. And so Russians tend to have attributes of both. So, but my point is that there's no reason to feel hate for people who are playing the game the way that. But again, see, this is you're not understanding either. Jews are not sadistically anti-white. Okay? They have been, they are used to a world where that is the main competition and the main opportunity. Okay? I'm not saying that you need to offer empathy to anyone. I'm saying that you need to intellectually understand what is happening. And again, like I said, I think that both the anti-Semites and the Jews completely fail to understand this. I think that both sides of that particular coin are operating on a fundamentally false conceptual model. It's understandable because everyone's just looking at it solely from the framework of existing history, failing to understand that there are certain aspects of that history that are simply coincidental. It's very common to mistake a correlation for a cause. All right? If there had been a small number of Chinese in the same situation, the same damn thing would have happened. Okay? So anyhow, yeah, I mean that maybe we need to add a fourth aspect here, which is cultural confidence. The Chinese are astonishingly confident. You know, the whole thing in the 19th century was a huge shock to them. But they are still confident. Jews are incredibly insecure. You know, they are an extremely fearful people. And so, you just need to. Jews did not give white people religion or modern science. So, just don't say ignorant things like that, especially not here. But my point is that once you understand these patterns, once you understand these things, it is so much easier to make sense of what's going on. And so it's much easier to not get caught up in these, not get caught up in anger over these things, not get caught up in these outdated, incorrect conceptual models, and you can better understand what's going on in the world. What happened to the Chinese that shocked them was the fact that they were not the Middle Kingdom in the center of the universe. They were shocked that the Europeans were more advanced than they were. The barbarians were not supposed to be more advanced than the rulers of the world. Yeah, it was the Opium Wars, basically, yes. So, so China will be dominant sooner or later. And like I told one Jewish friend of mine, who was they were talking about the whole Chinese thing, and I said, well, you need to realize that the Holocaust card is not going to work on, you can cry about 6 million people getting killed, and the Chinese are like, hey, we killed 10 times that many of our own people, and we did it a lot more recently. what do we care that somebody killed a few of you, And so, so anyhow, if you want to get a better, I don't know that anyone's really written much about the high trust, low trust concept in terms of history. But a great book that you should read, that I would highly, highly recommend reading, is The Clash of Civilizations by Samuel Huntington. When you read it, you will be astonished at how much the man was able to see ahead of time. So I highly, highly recommend that. Anyhow, to get back to Far Cry, let's see. Let's wait and see. Maybe it will be a great game, and whether it's Gavin or me, we will be a wonderful game villain. So we'll just have to wait and see. But again, don't. I say this often. Don't overreact. Just because you're the bad guy today doesn't mean you don't get to be the good guy tomorrow. And so I'm not saying that all press is good press. That's definitely not true. But the villains are indeed often cooler, said the Supreme Dark Lord. So have a good evening. We'll see you soon.